Hello and welcome to another episode of The Kickout, the final word in professional wrestling. This is a Card Subject to Change production. I am your host, the Wizard CZ, and joining me, as always, is one half of the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions, Never Wrong Nick Bull. Nick, we just came off of a fantastic episode talking with Damien Saint. I think if you haven't watched it, it was our 150th episode, so milestone there. And if you haven't gone back and watched or listened to it, I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely was. Damien was great in studio. We had talked to him before previously on a podcast when we did our pre-show podcast party. Said that night we want to get him in a long-form interview, get him in the studio and pick his brain, and he did not disappoint. Had a great discussion with him, and his discussion kind of spawned what this show is going to be. So,
yes,
CZ, what do you want to talk about?
I think we need to talk. We talked a lot about rivalries with Damien Saint. We talked about Edge and John Cena, of course, his big rivalry with Jared Thumb here on the Iowa independent scene. But I think we need to talk about rivalries. And Nick, I'm gonna let you have the table first. Let you have the microphone first on this one.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of the backbone of the conversation that we had with Damien in episode 150 was the talk of rivalries. We got on the subject with Edge and John Cena. Of course, Edge and CM Punk had one. If you want to talk rivalries, Stone Cold and The Rock, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. You could talk the Bloodline right now and what's going on with that. You could talk about Cody and finishing his story and all the battles he faced. But
yeah,
I guess I want to ask you, when you hear rivalry, what comes to mind in your head? What's the rivalry that sticks out to you that you always, dog ear and go back to and watch matches of? What's that rivalry that you like?
So I've got a couple that come to mind, and one of them is going to be recency bias. We'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But the big one, me being the Shawn Michaels fan that I am, one of the biggest rivalries I always go back to has to be Bret and Shawn.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. That huge Iron Man match at Mania, the screw job and the controversy surrounding that, and the animosity they had in real life for each other after what happened in Montreal. Only making amends once Bret decided it was time to make amends with WWE, coming back and bridging the gap with McMahon, bridging the gap with Shawn Michaels. Nick, I want to sidebar that a little bit here. I'm kind of surprised that Bret did bridge that gap, did build that bridge back up, because he still holds a grudge with one Bill Goldberg.
Yeah, I don't know if that will ever get fixed, but I think with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, it was such a wonderful, magical thing. You've got undoubtedly the greatest in-ring performer of all time with Shawn Michaels. You've got undoubtedly the best pro wrestler of all time in ring with Bret Hart.
Yes.
Contrasting styles: Hart, quiet and reserved, more old school, mat-based. Shawn Michaels, loud, boisterous, high flyer, flamboyant. Styles make fights, and those guys had a great rivalry. And in the discussion we had with Damien Saint, rivalries, I think, really take off when you blur the lines. And the lines were definitely blurred there between Bret and Shawn. They really did not like each other. It was a known fact they didn't like each other. And it all came to a boiling head at Survivor Series 97, the infamous Montreal screw job. That was real. Everything that happened that night was real. That was not the predetermined outcome. So many things surrounded that match and that rivalry that made it take off, that made it red hot, that made it can't miss, that made it that we're still talking about it here in 2024.
Yes.
Bret and Shawn, definitely one of those rivalries that cannot be forgotten. And they had some other great matches beforehand. I believe they were in the first ladder match in WWF history. Bret and Shawn were. It was for the Intercontinental title. This was before the famous ladder matches that Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon / Scott Hall had. Brett and Sean had a ladder match before those two monumental, historic, game-changing wrestling matches that Sean and Razor had. But getting back to Brett and Sean, unbelievable. They had the rivalry maybe started even as early as the tag team days when the Hart Foundation and the Rockers
yeah.
and the Rockers won the titles from the Hart Foundation, but the rope came loose on a Saturday night's main event, and the decision was reversed. So it kind of got started early, and it continued to be a great rivalry. We got some great payoff matches with it, and regrettably, it ended in Montreal in '97. That was the last of Brett in the WWF as an active wrestler per se, and but we have that rivalry to hang our hat on to go back and watch, an excellent rivalry.
Oh, I completely agree. One of the best out there. I mentioned recency bias, and I wanna this comes to mind because of recent events. But I can't talk about rivalries and not mention your boy Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson, who, for all intents and purposes, ended their rivalry last week on Dynamite.
Unbelievable. You had told me at the beginning of 2024 we would get another Danielson McGuinness match, I wouldn't have believed you. And to finally have gotten it, kind of on Bryan Danielson's farewell tour, so to speak, in the AEW, his next loss, he retires. I, as a big self-admitted Nigel McGuinness mark, he's my favorite Ring of Honor wrestler of all time. To see him come back, obviously he came back at AEW's All In at Wembley in the Gauntlet match, and that was good enough for me. Like, I thought that was great, and if I never seen him in a ring again, I was happy that I got to see him. But to see him engage in promos with Danielson, build this match for Grand Slam, have this match after, what was it, 13 or 14 years?
13
he
or
looked
14,
amazing.
yeah.
He looked amazing. He looked like he didn't have any ring rust. And I know who you're in there with is a big deal in the overall product. Danielson's an absolute pro, and I think we can also say that Nigel McGuinness is an absolute pro.
Yes.
And what a match they had to kick off Dynamite at Dynamite Grand Slam. A great bow to tie and put on top of the package that is their rivalry. They had a very renowned rivalry all throughout Ring of Honor. You want to go back and watch it, there is a YouTube link. I think it's like 11 hours long of all their stuff. It's worth watching. There's some great stuff there. I need to pull out. I got the box of ROH DVDs here sitting behind me. I'm sure I could cue that up too, but go do yourself a favor and watch some Bryan Danielson and watch Nigel McGuinness, that rivalry. Unbelievable. Great stuff. Great stuff from two top-tier wrestlers.
Absolutely. Now, Nick, I brought up a couple. What comes to your mind when you think of rivalries?
I got to go back, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Hogan and Savage, from my earlier wrestling fandom days,
Right.
The Mega Powers coming together, then the Mega Powers breaking up, and them having that feud culminating at WrestleMania 5, I believe. You had that's very memorable for me as a kid growing up. Stone Cold and The Rock. I mean, I think they were the perfect muse for each other. They both could go on the mic. They both were so over with fans. And they wrestled at they wrestled at the highest, the pinnacle, the peak of the business. They main evented WrestleMania. So I think of that a lot. And I always think back to that My Way or the Highway Limp Bizkit promo video for them too, and how that's caught on with today's generation. Like, the younger kids are going back and watching that. And I just really have great memories from that rivalry. Stone Cold and The Rock are two of the all-time greats. And that comes to my mind when I hear the word rivalry.
I would feel bad not mentioning some semi-current rivalry that I know is gonna pop you a little bit here. I'm going through a rewatch of old NXT shows, and I'm not there yet. I'm not to this point yet, but one of my favorite tag team rivalries led to one of my favorite singles rivalries in NXT specifically, and that was the Revival and DIY that led into Ciampa and Gargano.
Yeah. Once again, you've got, 4 guys who can wrestle tag team singles, and they do it well. And the DIY Revival matches are a thing of beauty. Wasn't the last one a 2 out of 3 falls match? Was that the big culmination? I know they had a 2 out of 3 falls match somewhere in that rivalry. Those 2 teams.
I'd have to go back and look. I mean, you are never wrong, but
well,
I'd have to go.
When it comes to memory, never wrong on the takes, but when it comes to the memory, a little shady. But I think they had a 2 out of 3 falls match, and that's the one you kind of want to go back and watch. 2 great teams going at it. Would love to see them go at it sometime soon, someday down the road. I don't know if that happens with the promotions they're currently in. And we've got some good rivalries going on now. I'm going to throw out one more rivalry, and it's not a very popular rivalry with the masses, but I think at the core of it, it's a good rivalry to watch because both guys can go in the ring. And when I watch this rivalry at the time and when I watch it back now, I always get like, hey, it was all about one-upsmanship with these two. Like they were just trying to top the other guy. I don't know if they really hated this guy. I don't think these guys really blurred the lines, but their in-ring work rivaled each other. And that is an ECW with Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn. Wonderful rivalry if you want to go back and watch the timeline of the matches. When they hooked up, they weren't bad matches. The crowd was pleased, and it's a lot of string wrestling. It's a lot of different spots, but to me, it's a total game of one-upsmanship between the two. And I just, it's like a dark horse rivalry that I think doesn't get enough love. And I hope I give it the props it deserves here on the Kickout. And I hope you guys actually go and watch some of those matches between Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, I kind of, you got me now motivated to go and find and seek those out because I was never really big into ECW. I know that was during the tape trading days. I was, ECW never really was on my radar until they started creeping into WWF at the time, WWE, in the later years of ECW. But yeah, I want to go back. I'd love to go back and rewatch those. That sounds like a fun time for sure.
Well, we've had a fun time for sure on the Kickout. We hope that you have as well. CZ, if you want to pull the curtain back a little bit and let our listeners and our viewers know if they're watching here, what they will see on episode 151 of Card Subject to Change.
Absolutely. 151, we are going to be talking about WWE Bad Blood. And I'm super excited because obviously the marquee matchup, yeah, you've got Roman and Cody taking on Solo and Jacob, but the marquee match has to be...
Which has been a rivalry, right? That's a rivalry.
Right.
Right.
And I'm not poo-pooing on that rivalry or that match by any means. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, but the marquee match has to be the rivalry between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre that will culminate in Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, many believe this will be the payoff between the two, the third match, maybe the third and final match between the two for quite some time. These guys have done their job in hyping this match, hyping this rivalry, blurring the lines, making it real. I cannot wait for Hell in a Cell Bad Blood. I think it's definitely why I'm tuning in. They've put together a good card, don't get me wrong, but it's why I'm watching that show.
Absolutely. And Nick, I want to go a little bit further into the future. We're talking about Hell in a Cell. We need to talk about cage matches a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
Because as this hits the airwaves, it'll be a week and a half. We've been announcing for the last couple of weeks our guests for the second Absolute Pro pre-show podcast party. I will be going to Waterloo. Nick, I don't know if you want to go too far behind the curtain, but I'm going to officially announce it now. Zach has mentioned it. Nick will not be joining us because of family obligations. I will be joined in Waterloo by the Shotgun Wrestling Radio host, Zach Takis. And stay tuned. We'll be announcing one more guest at the end of this week. But I'm excited. I think I'm sorry you're not going to be there because I know you and I had a blast at the first one.
Yes.
But maybe this won't be the last. We'll have to wait and see.
And the show's in good hands. Zach Takis is top-notch person. He's been doing this podcasting thing for a lot longer than us with Shotgun Wrestling Radio. So props to him for stepping in. I have a family obligation. My oldest is going on a college visit. Need to be there for that. Otherwise, my butt would be in Waterloo to watch some absolute pro wrestling, a cage match. They're going to put on a good show. The show is in very good hands, of course, with The Wiz and, of course, with Zach Takis. You guys are going to do a good job with that. But yes, I will not be in attendance, will not be on that show, but Zach will fill in for me. And I don't think we could have found a better replacement. And I'm glad he's stepping in. So yeah, that's what's coming up for the card subject to change.
Absolutely. We've got a fun couple of weeks. We've got a couple more interviews coming up in October, as we head into the end of the year. We're getting real close to 2025, and I'm going to start reaching out to people and booking guests for next year here pretty soon.
It's crazy how fast this year went. Time flies when you're having fun, right? And if you like what you're hearing here, you like what you see here on either the Kickout or the Card Subject Change, send us a line, like, follow, and subscribe. Tell a friend, share a review. Let us know if there's a topic you want us to discuss here on the Kickout. Reach out to us on our socials. They're available at the Wizard CZ, at NickBull55. We'd love to hear from our fans. We'd love to talk wrestling. That's why we're here. And until next time, this has been the Kickout, the final word in pro wrestling.